RKO Studios, confident on the success of King Kong, would greenlight a sequel before Kong was even released. This sequel, titled Son of Kong, would be written by Ruth Rose and directed by Ernest Schoedsack, as Cooper had just taken over as production chief for Selznick, who had left the company shortly before Kong's release. Willis O'Brien and his team would return to do the special effects for Son of Kong, and Robert Armstrong, Frank Riker, Steve Clemente, Noble Johnson, and Victor Wong would return portraying their characters from King Kong. Rose would intentionally make this script less serious, for a reason being if you can't make it bigger, make it funnier. The script picks up a few months after the ending of King Kong. Carl Denham, being down on his luck and broke due to the lawsuits from Kong's rampage through New York, escapes the country after hearing news that he could possibly be indicted with Englehorn, who was facing similar lawsuits, starting a shipping business with him. They run across Hellstrom, who is revealed to be the Norwegian skipper who gave Denham the map to Skull Island. He tells them of a treasure hidden on the island. The trio then head to Skull Island, where they meet with the natives, who now have dinosaurs living outside the wall due to the door being broken. While searching for the treasure, they run into a little Kong. They find the treasure and escape as an earthquake and typhoon sinks the island. This sequence was supposed to feature a dinosaur stampede like The Lost World. Problems for the script would arise when the budget for Son of Kong was set for $250,000, about half the budget of the original King Kong. This new budget would cause several changes. Gone was the dinosaur stampede. The native scenes were severely cut back and only appeared on the beach to save money on building the native sets. In fact, the sets were all built more cheaply and lacked the depth that they did in Kong. Even the miniature sets would suffer because of this. The actors were given a deal that they would receive a percentage of profits after the movie recouped double its budget, so that they could be paid less up front. This worked out for them, allowing them to make even more money than they made on King Kong. Armstrong would prefer working on this film more than King Kong due to the fleshing out of his character and giving him more to do. O'Brien was very enthusiastic about this film, especially the stampede scene, until he was hit with the slashing of his budgets. O'Brien would walk out midway through production. He asked to be removed from the film's credits, but Cooper refused. His assistant, Buzz Gibson, would finish the animation for the movie, which O'Brien saw as a betrayal. The Kong armatures would be reused for Son of Kong. New fur was used to avoid the animator's fingers ruffling the fur, and dyed white, making Kiko, as he was being called during production, an albino. The full-scale hand was remade with white fur as well. This film would use only the Williams traveling map process due to the new optical printer that Linwood Dunn created midway through the production of King Kong, making it much easier to produce more consistent results than the Dunning process could achieve. Some of the dinosaurs from Creation and King Kong would be used, mainly the Styracosaurus, finally making its debut after being made for Creation and cut from King Kong. The Brontosaurus head from Kong would also make an appearance. Marcel Delgado would construct a bear armature for Son of Kong, as well as a completely made-up dragon-like creature. Murray Spivak would return to make the sounds for the film, and Max Steiner would return to do the score. This score is more whimsical to match the tone of the movie, with a few moments that harken back to the original Kong score. Son of Kong would release on December 22nd, 1933, less than 9 months after King Kong. It became a modest success in the US. The film would be a much bigger success overseas. The only other giant monster movie released during the 30s was The Secret of the Loch, a 1934 British film that would be the first film made about the Loch Ness Monster. It could be argued that this is just technically a dinosaur film, but I will mention it here anyway. Tragedy would strike O'Brien during the last weeks of production on Son of Kong. O'Brien's wife, who he had been separated from for a few years at this point, Hazel Ruth Collette, would fatally shoot their 2 sons, William and Willis Jr., before turning the gun on herself. She would survive this attempt and live another year in the Los Angeles General Hospital prison ward until her death. The loss of his sons would devastate O'Brien. O'Brien would remarry later that same year to Darlene Prennett, who he remained with until his death. O'Brien's professional career would not fare much better, having trouble finding work. He would work with Cooper on The Last Days in Pompeii in 1935, and another film, Dancing Pirate, in 1936. O'Brien would work on several films that would fall through. such as Gwangi, a story about a valley of dinosaurs that cowboys come across. And another film, War Eagles, a project O'Brien was working on with Cooper, about a Viking tribe in the North Pole that rode eagles as mounts that would then fight planes in New York. They would get as far as making armatures and test footage for the film before it was cancelled when Cooper would re-enlist in the military during World War II. O'Brien would be reduced to painting matte paintings for films in the mid-40s to make ends meet. The 30s and 40s would see quite a few Kong ripoffs released, most of which are considered lost films. One of those is a Japanese short film released in 1933 titled Japanese King Kong. The film is no giant gorilla and is merely a drama that has the character play King Kong in a play. Another Japanese film titled The King Kong That Appeared in Edo, released in 1938. It is also considered a lost film. This only features a giant ape in promotional images. The ape is human-sized in the film. King Kong would get a re-release in 1938, but censorship laws had gotten stricter than in 1933. Because of this, many shots were censored for the film. Scenes such as Kong and the Brontosaurus biting people, to Kong stripping off Anne's clothes, were cut from the film. This censored version would be the only version for the next several decades because the cut footage had been lost. A few technical innovations during this time would be the advent of Technicolor, bringing color to film. The process had been developed during the early 1900s in a 2-color and then 2-strip process, but the Great Depression took its toll, forcing the film industry to cut back on expenses and film in black and white for a longer period. This eventually gave way to the 3-strip process. This is somewhat complicated to explain fully, but it's achieved by a camera that uses a beam splitter that reflects 3 filters onto 3 separate black and white film strips, the colors being red, green, and blue. This required a new traveling matte process, as the Williams process would not work with color due to the lighting required to achieve the process. Larry Butler would create this during the film The Thief of Baghdad in 1940, this being a remake of the 1924 silent film of the same name. The process uses a blue screen in the background. Blue was used because it was the farthest away from film tones and because blue film stock had the smallest grain. You would then take the blue portion of the film stock and create a silhouette similar to the Williams process. An optical printer would then be able to combine the new background shot with the foreground object. This process wasn't perfect. It was time-consuming and gave the actor a bluish outline in the final image, and couldn't handle small things like hair real well. The late 40s would see the reunion of the creative team behind Kong for 1949's Mighty Joe Young. Based on an idea by Marion C. Cooper, Ruth Rose would write the screenplay, Ernest Schoedsack would direct solely this time, Ted Cheeseman would edit the film, newcomer Roy Hunt would provide the score, Willis O'Brien would return with Marcel Delgado for the special effects, along with newcomer Ray Harryhausen. Raymond Frederick Harryhausen was born June 29, 1920. He would see The Lost World as a young child, but it was King Kong in 1933 that captured the imagination of young Harryhausen. Harryhausen would spend the rest of his childhood making models and animating them. He would even get the opportunity to meet O'Brien, who would critique his early models and push him to take classes in art direction, photography, and editing, which Harryhausen would do. Harryhausen would strike up a friendship with author Ray Bradbury in his youth. Harryhausen would create several test reels and short films during this time period. In them, you can really see Harryhausen's eye for visual storytelling, where creatures would enter the shot and really heighten the tension. Harryhausen would serve in the U.S. Army for World War II as a loader, clapper boy, gopher, and later camera assistant. In 1947, Harryhausen would be hired as an assistant animator for his first feature film, Mighty Joe Young. 6 armatures would be created by Marcel Delgado for Joe. By now, Delgado would be a master of creating these armatures, which were covered with a new fur from unborn calves. This new fur wouldn't show fingerprints as much. Harryhausen would pick one of these that he liked and would almost exclusively use for animating. He nicknamed it Jennifer. O'Brien would oversee the animation on this movie, but would do very little, if any, of the actual animating. Most of the now perfected techniques first pioneered on Kong would be on display in this film. It failed to capture the magic of the original Kong, however. The film would be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, which it won. Traditionally, the director of the film would accept the award, but in this case, Cooper would present the award to O'Brien. By the 1950s, the Age of Discovery, as I like to call it, would be over. The end of World War II would see the use of a terrifying new weapon that would change the world forever, leading to a new age of fear and paranoia. The frightening thought of what science had done and could do would leak into many fabrics of society, including the giant monster film genre. The Age of Discovery was over. The atomic age was now upon us. Thank you all for watching. If you like what you see, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'll see everybody in the next one.